Yeah, so I just want to officially welcome everyone to our live tonight we have a registered dietitian with us, Linda Armada, and we will be talking today we'll be getting some tips on nutrition and how to stay healthy, and especially just practically, right? Because I know that's for a lot of us, practically speaking, it's that's the struggle, right? And so tonight we will be we're attempting to stream live to the Facebook group, but it's not really working out. So it will just be us tonight in terms of the comments, and we will be recording this in speaker view. So what that means is that the recording will have myself or Linda as we speak, and if you want to unmute yourself to ask a question or type a question in the chat, you're welcome to do so. So you can either, as we go along, you can type questions in, or definitely you can raise your hand and ask a question. So whatever you're most comfortable with.
And I love questions.
Yes. So Linda, you could just share a little bit about yourself and what you do professionally. And I know, I feel like dietitians are like therapists in a way, where everybody kind of has their own niche and specialty. So like some therapists are like, for myself, I love doing work with trauma and couples and moms. That's kind of like my kind of love for therapy. And I know with dietitians, it's like you could work with eating disorders, or you could work with diabetes patients. You know, there's like so many different subspecialties within the field, and I think a lot of people are not necessarily familiar with that. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you specialize in.
All right. Well, yeah, and it's true though. Like we dietitians always joke around that we wear so many hats as dietitians. It's not just the nutrition part. We end up doing so much psychology oriented type of things too. So, but yeah, thanks for inviting me. This is gonna be fun.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.
I love answering nutrition questions and getting people's different perspectives on how they view food and eating and traditions related to food. I love like different ethnicities as far as like trying different foods and trying to create, you know, like the same chicken dish. You know, you can just quickly make a chicken breast in a pan, but the way you season it, you've made a different dish every day, you know? So I love that sort of thing. But I've been a dietitian for like 19 years now. I was surprised when I started thinking about how many years has it been? I'm like, wow, 19 years. And being a dietitian has been kind of funny in that I was that kid that was growing up that refused to eat. And, you know, my mom was always saying, you know, there's starving kids in China. And actually, she's from South America. She's from Ecuador. So she'd say, there's starving children in my country of Ecuador. Oh. And so I'd say, well, here's my food, just box it up and mail it to them. Yes. And she thought that was a little rude, so I got in trouble for that. But I was not the person that liked to eat. So she thinks it's hilarious now that I talk to people about, you know, eating and just really enjoying their food and that sort of thing. So for a few years I worked, my first years as a dietitian, I worked in the WIC program, the Women, Infant and Children program. For people like their lower income. And so it was exciting in that I could teach people that maybe didn't know so much about nutrition or didn't have access to healthier foods in their community, like how to use the foods they did have and how to feed their families in a healthy way with, you know, the low resources that they had. So, and I have some great stories of success from that. I learned a lot working there. But while I was working there, I got the opportunity to also work in a diabetes clinic that was part of the WIC program. And so I had always been interested in diabetes. My father had gotten diabetes when I was pretty young. I'm allowed to say this. I'm not breaking any HIPAA rules or anything. He told me, go ahead, use me as an example anytime you want. So, but I think I was like maybe 10, 12 years old when he got diagnosed with diabetes. And he's the kind of person that says, you know, if there's a situation, he tries to find a way to solve it. So he said, oh, these candy bars and Cokes that I've been drinking every day, I think this is part of the problem. So he just started to eat healthier and started teaching us how to eat healthier as well. And so he always likes to tell me he doesn't like to read, but he sure bought a lot of diabetes books and, and magazines and so on when he got diagnosed. And that's where I got interested in nutrition, was some of the magazines and the books that he got talked about. You know, if you just, you know, eat a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, it can help resolve this situation. I started learning the history of nutrition too, about, you know, the vitamin C and resolving scurvy for sailors and things like that. And, you know, as a child, I thought that was the most exciting thing. And so I was very interested in that. But just seeing how my dad has worked on his diabetes throughout the years and teaching himself, and, you know, not looking at the diagnosis as something that is a death sentence, which a lot of people, as soon as they're told you have diabetes, they think, oh, I'm going to lose my foot, I'm going to lose my kidney, I'm going to lose my sight. Because, you know, many years ago, we didn't have a way to help people with those things. And now we know so much more. We have better treatments and so on. So just watching him take care of his own diabetes, you know, as I was growing up, got me interested in diabetes. So that's how I continued the route, and I eventually became a certified diabetes educator. And I did that in a diabetes clinic for 10 years. I was a diabetes educator and had one-on-one sessions and group sessions, and, you know, the follow-ups, those were the most fun. Whereas, you know, the follow-up, each time somebody came back and said, hey, I tried this and this is what happened, and we could kind of work through, you know, the situation. And you know, sometimes it's not just about what it says on the paper, but what's going on up here too. And it's like, how can I take the next step? You know, do I have the enthusiasm, the motivation to do the next step? Do I have the understanding to do the next step? And so, you know, just being that person's cheerleader is always a lot of fun. So unfortunately, that clinic closed, and I then decided to move on to work as an inpatient dietitian, which has been a very different type of job. And I've learned how to do things like tube feedings and parenteral nutrition, which is nutrition through an IV, and just doing the calculations. And I'm a math geek, even though I'm not great at math. I am a math geek, so that's been fun, and just learning new things related to the intensive care unit and things like that. But I do miss so much the one-on-one. So I do, you know, try to see people on the side as well, just to kind of keep that going. And I get to do that at a clinic, which unfortunately we haven't been doing too much because of COVID. But there's a clinic I volunteer at a few times a month, and it's for people that are low income. They can't afford insurance, but they also don't qualify for things like Medicare and Medicaid. So they're kind of like the in-between people. You know what I mean? The ones that kind of get lost through the cracks. And so a lot of them have jobs, you know, work maybe like at a convenience store or a restaurant, and they just don't get offered the insurance and those things. So they don't really get to go see the doctor as often and so on. So that's what we have there is we have, you know, doctors that volunteer. And so when I approached them and said, hey, I'd like to be your dietitian, they're like, oh, wait, we've never had a dietitian before. So that's been really fun to work with people in that aspect. And, you know, I'm their diabetes educator as well. So it's been interesting. It's a nice balance between what I do as an inpatient dietitian and then work with them, and then see some clients as well for either diabetes or weight loss, sometimes for kidneys too, you know, to help protect your kidneys as you're losing your kidney function, to try to stay off of dialysis. So I guess those are my main, diabetes is my main passion. But especially the psychology behind food itself and our habits and things like that. That's my other passion. I think I've been reading psychology books since I was probably 8. Didn't understand what I was reading, but I loved it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So good. So let's just dive in, and you know, where do you want to start?
So I know that you were saying that throughout the last few months, people have been asking a lot of questions, general questions about nutrition, and Those questions can range so much, and sometimes the answers can range so much. So if we have anybody with questions, great. I was thinking that we could maybe start with what I'd love to teach anybody. It doesn't matter what disease state they're in, or if they're actually in the healthier state and just want to try to eat healthier. I love to teach what's called the plate method. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my favorite. It's very easy. I like it because it's visual and it's very versatile, so it's great for meal planning too. So I do have a picture here. I don't know if it's going to work if I pull it up. Let me see. Can you see that?
Yes.
Ooh, you can see it. Okay. So just a plate, and you'll see that the bottom half of the plate is what we call non-starchy vegetables. And my kids used to call that rabbit food. So when people say, well, what's non-starchy vegetables? Those, I just call them rabbit food. It's any vegetable that's not starchy. And I love to really encourage those because they're low in calories, they're low in carbohydrate, but they're loaded with vitamins and minerals. I like to say that what they contain helps to convert all the other food into energy. You know, some of the nutrients that are in it really helps you with your energy cycle. And so I like to encourage those. Plus they're loaded with antioxidants. You probably always hear, you know, the more rich in color, the better it is for you. And that's because of the antioxidants. They're loaded in what's called phytochemicals. Have you heard of that term? It sounds scary, right?
I don't know.
It sounds scary because the word chemicals is in there, phytochemicals, but there are dozens, probably hundreds of phytochemicals in our foods, and those are actually naturally in there. We want those to be in there, but it's what makes food the color that they are, the smell that they are. You know, when you break open an orange or a tangerine, that little oil that comes out and it just sprays into the air and everybody can smell it. It smells so good. That actually contains antioxidants and phytochemicals, I'm sorry. And all these phytochemicals, they each do something a little bit different in our bodies. Like there's some, like maybe you've heard of lycopene. So tomatoes are loaded in lycopene. And you've heard of resveratrol, right? That one has been talked about for years because it's in red wine and it's supposed to be healthy for your heart. So there are a lot of different of these phytochemicals in your vegetables. It's actually also in whole grains. We haven't gotten to that yet, but it's also in your whole grains and in your fruits and in nuts as well. So anyway, these non-starchy vegetables, they can be quite filling. So it's something that I like to encourage people to do a little bit more of. I love asking, especially the guys, so how do you feel about vegetables? And every once in a while, kind of more frequently than I thought I would, somebody tells me like, I won't eat vegetables, not even a single one, no way. But when I really get down to it and start asking them questions, what about this, what about that? Most people do like at least 4 or 5 different types of vegetables, and then that's it. So you only like 4 or 5 and that's it. So, I like to encourage people to try different ones. So for example, if you don't like carrots, for example, that's something that you could maybe just use a little matchstick carrots. Have you seen those in the grocery store? They're already pre-cut and everything. Or you could shred your own and just throw it into a rice dish or into your chili, and as you put them into all these different foods in a way that you're not really tasting them or seeing them, you do start to get a little bit more used to it because you see it and it becomes more acceptable to you. And it can take at least 15 tries of eating a food before you say, okay, it's acceptable. I'm not even promising you'll like it at that point, but you'll say, okay, it's not horrible. I think I can start trying it more often. So I hope my kids never listen to this because I'm going to tell you something I've never told them, but I didn't like strawberries. And I used to tell them every time I bought something, like one of my kids liked strawberries, so I would buy it. And so I'd say, well, if you don't like it, I want you to at least take a few bites because eventually you'll like it. Well, one of them noticed I was not eating strawberries when I made everybody else eat it. And Mom, what's going on? Why aren't you eating strawberries? So I'd say, well, I don't really like them since I was a kid. And they're like, well, it's not fair that we have to eat our peas and this and that we don't like, and you're not eating your strawberries. I'm like, okay, you're right. So I'd say, okay, I'll take one strawberry and I'll take 2 bites. And, just like we tell kids, just take a bite or two. And so I started doing that. And so my promise to myself was that anytime there was a strawberry available, so even like at a party, which was, great, especially if it was on a piece of cake. Like, yes, I want that cake that has strawberries on it. I'm supposed to be eating strawberries. But anyway, so, every time there was a strawberry available, seriously, I would take a bite or two. And then if I didn't like it, that's fine. That's not a problem. But eventually, I started eating an entire strawberry and saying, this isn't so bad. I think I kind of like it. And I have to tell you, the other day, I ate 3 whole strawberries in one sitting. And I liked it.
I tried that strategy, but the strawberry was covered in chocolate.
Oh.
Does that count?
Yes, it counts.
Because I also, because growing up in the Caribbean, we didn't have certain fruits and vegetables like here in America. So strawberries, berries, any type of berries, blackberry, blueberries, I never had as a kid growing up. And so that was one of the things that I was just like, I don't like strawberries as an adult. And really it was because I never had it and the texture of it was a little bit weird to me. And then I tried it chocolate covered, thinking I wouldn't like it. And I was like, oh, the chocolate really like covers it well enough. To like it. And then my husband is the same thing because he's from Jamaica. And so he started eating strawberries. And I was like, since when do you eat strawberries? I was so shocked. So I think to your point that we could, once we start trying foods, even if we go in thinking, oh, I'm not going to like this. Like if we give it, how many? 15
tries just to say, okay, it's not so bad. Yeah, and I know a lot of people may
be like, it's great, it's okay now.
Yes. And I know a lot of people try smoothies now, so that's another place where I'll throw in a few strawberries because they're sweet, and so I use that instead of sugar. I'll use the bananas, the really ripe bananas, or the strawberries instead of adding sugar. So yeah, but hopefully my kids won't watch this, so they won't say, oh, you do like finally strawberries, because I haven't told them yet, and they're well into their 20s. I've been liking strawberries for about 5 years now. I haven't told them. It's my secret. Wait, no, the whole world knows now. So yeah, so that's the deal with the vegetables, is just keep trying them in different ways. If you don't like something cooked, try it raw. Try it different ways. A question I get asked a lot about vegetables is, should I eat raw vegetables or cooked vegetables? And actually, we should try eating them both ways, because there are some nutrients that are better absorbed by the body when you've cooked them, and then others that are better when you haven't cooked them. So yeah, so try them, all different ways. You may find you like some better than others. There are some people that are called super tasters. Have you heard of that before?
No.
So super tasters really do have a hard time tasting or eating certain foods because they taste things so much more metallic-y, I think, like just a different way than most people do. And so when somebody tells me, oh, I can't stand, these vegetables, and I can't stand this flavor and that flavor, I start to think that maybe they're a super taster. So that's really interesting about, just the way we perceive food can be different because of our genetics, because this is all genetic as far as the super tasters. It's the percentage of the population.
Yeah.
So let's see, what else can I tell you about your veggies? So, the other question I get a lot, canned, frozen, or fresh. So nutrition-wise, unless you're growing the vegetable in your own garden and eating it fresh from the garden, which is the best, frozen is right up there, with very, fresh from your garden, because they're picked at the peak of their ripeness and processed immediately. And by processed, I mean, they're washed and cut up and that sort of thing, and then frozen right away. So as long as they're frozen without the extra salt added and the sauces and things like that, they're they're just as good as picking them from your garden. Um, our vegetables that are in the grocery store, some of them actually are pretty fresh too. We have a few grocery stores in our area that sometimes buy from local farmers. So those veggies are very, very fresh. Then there's other vegetables and fruits that can maybe come from another country or the other side of the United States. Those are not quite as fresh. And so over the time that they've been sitting in storage, sitting in the truck, sitting on the shelf, they may have lost a little bit of their nutritional value. It doesn't mean that they're not worth it. Still eat them. They're still loaded in nutrition. But there's nothing wrong with frozen. It's my whole point. And then the canned, of course, those can be high in salt because that's used as a preservative. And I know some canned vegetables are like no salt added and that sort of thing. But even if you bought the salted ones, you can just rinse that several times and remove about 50% of the salt.
Okay.
Yes. So, because I know, go ahead.
No, I was saying that's good to know. I don't think I knew that.
I know some people shop at some places where they have to get vegetables or just any canned products that, you know, like what do you call them? I call them the scratch and dent stores. You know, like they just have like the banged up cans, which I don't like people buying because of food poisoning situations, but maybe they're just getting also products that don't look as pretty when you open the can, and so that's why they're a lower price, and so they get sold at you know, certain stores. Well, those generally are going to have a lot of salt in them, but yeah, so just rinse them. So rinse them like 2 or 3 times, and you can remove quite a bit of the salt. There's still salt inside the vegetable that's absorbed in there, but you can remove some of that salt that's on the outside.
Okay.
Okay, also the other thing about veggies, I didn't know I had this much to say about vegetables. I can probably talk for the entire hour like this about vegetables. I was remembering somebody that I was helping with portion sizes. And so this person has a favorite bowl that they like to eat their food from. Well, the bowl was pretty big. And I said, well, how many cups of food do you think is in that bowl whenever you put your pasta in there? And he said, well, maybe like 1.5 cups, 2 cups. So I said, well, let's go ahead and measure that. So took his bowl, took a measuring cup. Yeah, it was more like 3.5, almost 4 cups if he really mounded it up. So he was eating twice the amount he thought he was eating. Right. So, but he loves that bowl. He loves to eat from that bowl. So what we did is I said, well, what about vegetables? We're trying to get more vegetables into you because of its health properties and your nutritional goals. So, but he's not crazy about vegetables. So I said, well, how about if we put vegetables down at the bottom of the bowl, kind of uses up some of the space, and then you put your pasta on top. And so it looks like your bowl is packed with pasta, but you're getting half the amount of pasta and you're getting your veggies at the same time. And, you know, whatever sauce you've put on your pasta is kind of going down into your veggies and stuff. So it's actually worked out really great for him. He loved it. For him, it was like, you know, really good idea.
Yeah, I like that. That's such a
yeah. And so the other thing about the vegetables is because they're, you know, they take time to chew up and they take up so much space on your plate that if you're trying to reduce the amount of, for people with diabetes or people that are just trying to be careful with their carbohydrates, if they're trying to cut down on, let's say, rice, I'm going to pick on rice because I love rice. I grew up on rice, and you're from the islands, so you grew up on rice.
Rice, yes, all kinds of rice.
So for us, it's, we make the rice first, then we decide what's for dinner. As long as there was a pot of rice, we were good. So I grew up on, yeah, lots of rice. And I know, like, I'm Hispanic. I'm half Cuban, half Ecuadorian. And so both of them, you know, both sides of my family love rice. So I grew up thinking like, okay, like most of my plate should be rice, and then you pile some stuff on top of it. Well, I'm trying to watch my rice portions, not because there's anything wrong with rice, there's nothing wrong with starches, and there's nothing wrong with carbs, but I don't want to overdo it because I do have that family history of diabetes. And I'm Hispanic. So I always say I already have 2 points against me just when I was born. That's all I did was be born. And I already had 2 points against me. So, I'm trying to kind of watch a little bit with my carbs and stuff. So now if I remove some of that rice from my plate, I'm going to feel like I'm going to stay a little hungry. There's not enough food on my plate. But if I put the vegetables in there instead, then it looks like my plate's full. And we're visual eaters. All of us are very much visual eaters. My grandmother, every time I used to serve my plate, she lived with us for a while, and she'd say, "You're eating with your eyes again." I'm like, "Grandma, it looks so good." And she said, "That's what I mean. It looks so good. You're putting too much on your plate." But we are visual eaters. And so the veggies really fill up that plate, and it makes us feel like we're getting a lot of food. And we are, but it's good food. It's very filling and very important for our health.
Yeah.
And when you look across different ethnicities, different ways of eating, I don't love to talk about diets, because to me, like, the word diet just means the way you eat. Like when you go to the zoo, it says, "What's this animal's diet?" And it says what they eat. It's not because we're trying to make them lose weight. So I don't like to define the word diet as how I lose weight. It's just really a collection of what we eat and how we eat. But when you look across the different eating plans and the different ethnicities, what you see over and over are vegetables. There are some, I know there's some, when I talk to people from some of the islands, they say, "Well, we don't really eat vegetables." And they really do, though. They eat more vegetables than they think they do, because they season with garlic, they season with onions, they season with green peppers, or all kinds of peppers. Those are all vegetables. We just never really grew up thinking about it that way, because we think of them as seasoning.
Yes, that's very true.
Vegetables. We're actually really good vegetable eaters. And then, there's always like some potatoes and root vegetables, or, things like that. So yeah, we eat more vegetables than we like to claim. So I think I've exhausted the vegetable section of the plate. I think somebody had asked.
Half the plate must be vegetarian.
Half the plate. That's a really good goal, is to make half of your plate vegetables. If you want more than that, go for it. There's nothing wrong with going with more vegetables. I promise that nobody has gotten diabetes from eating too many vegetables. That doesn't happen. Now, somebody asked on the invite, what are non-starchy vegetables? I believe, I know, what carbohydrates can I eat that are low in carb? Yeah. That's what it was. And so my answer to that would be the non-starchy vegetables.
Okay.
Yes. So use those. Even at breakfast, you can get your non-starchy vegetables. See, I thought I had exhausted the topic, and I haven't.
One more question. What is the size of the plate? So that's a great question. Thank you for asking.
That is a really good question. So our plates have gotten larger over the years. So what used to be considered a platter that you would serve all the food on for all your guests to pick their food from, that's the size of the plate that now some people use as their dinner plate. And the bigger the plate, the more food you're going to put on it, because otherwise it looks empty. And again, we're visual eaters. And the more food you put on it, you're going to eat it, because somebody is starving in my mom's country. Yes. We all grew up with that. I know I'm not the only one.
I grew up the same way, where, oh gosh, my father always used to say, "You know how many people would be glad to get what you're throwing away?" And so it was this inbuilt culture that you had to finish your food,
Yes, there's so much guilt around not finishing your food. Try leaving a few bites on your plate at every meal and see how you feel.
Sacrilege.
It's hard. It's really hard. But I got around, don't worry, I'm going to answer the diameter question in a second, but I wanted to, I was thinking about, exactly that. I had read somewhere, it's like, well, if you're trying to cut just a few calories, no, actually, where it came from years ago? You might remember this commercial from years ago. They were saying, what if you just left 2 spoonfuls on your plate at every meal? you know, by the end of this many weeks, you'd have saved this many calories or something like that. It was, I don't remember, it was like one of those, I don't remember which diet plan it was, but I was like, you know, that's true. Why don't I ever leave some food on my plate?
Yes.
And so that's when I started trying it. And I was like, I can't do this. This is too hard. This just takes me back to childhood and I'm wasting food. I can't do it. So what I started doing is I will put the food on the plate and then I'll scoop 1 or 2 spoonfuls back into the pan, which is fine because I haven't sat down to eat. I haven't touched it yet, you know? So that was my way of having 1 or 2 fewer spoonfuls
Okay.
without wasting the food. And
Yeah.
it made me more intentional in realizing how much food I was actually eating.
Yes.
You know, it's like, yeah, I'm just scooping it on my plate and not really paying attention to how much I'm getting. So,
I love that. That's a great tip. I am very so I struggle with the whole finishing your plate thing, cultural piece. And so someone said instead of throwing it away, store it for a later time. And so
yes.
that is exactly what I do. But I feel that I am taking the long way to the bin in the refrigerator, but it eventually ends up in the bin, you know,
Right. Then
after
you feel
a few days.
terrible. I've started putting mine straight into my like little containers. Like I like to use the little ceramic containers with the lid on it. I forget what they're called now, but like it's like a little casserole dish, the little white ones with the lid on it. So sometimes when I have a little bit of leftovers, I'll throw it in there and then stick it in the freezer. And then the next day I might throw a few more things. And so by the end of the week, I might have a little bit of rice, some beans in there, and maybe a piece of chicken, you know, things like that. So
You have a whole other meal.
yes.
Right.
And I love to get a lot out of little things. You know what I mean? So what people might throw away, I like to say, no, no, I can use that. And so that's my way of saying, see, I proved it. I got a whole meal out of all these little bites and pieces that didn't need to be on my plate in the first place.
Yes, yes.
So as far as the plate, um, that was another thing that at one point I realized I was putting on a little bit of weight. My clothes were getting a little tighter. You know, I was like, okay, maybe I'm eating too much. So, and I hate measuring food. Who likes to measure? And it really is.
You say that, that normalizes my experience. That's always one of the number one tips dietitians give is you have to teaching you portion sizes of like, you know,
Yes. And it is very, very important to measure your food. So if there are any dietitians watching, I do teach people to measure their food. But what I do teach them is measure it a lot for like maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks. When you're first trying it, you know, really measure it, but I really want you to pay attention to how much space it takes up on a plate so that when you go out, you know what a half a cup looks like. How much space does it take up on a plate? And hopefully it's not a huge, huge plate. And then, you know, once you get pretty good at it, take a break for a little bit. And then because our eyes will deceive us and we eat with our eyes, then you want to go ahead and do it again. You know, start measuring for maybe like a weekend. You know, it's like maybe 1 or 2 weekends a month, retrain yourself. So if you're not great at measuring every day, that's a great way to do it. So some people are great at measuring and they love to measure their food, and that's awesome. And then there's also some little containers that you can get. I've seen those at different places. You buy them as a kit, and then so they're different colors, and some, you know, one color is a cup, one color is a half a cup, and then so you just put your food in there and put it on your plate. So some people find that kind of fun to do. The plates, so I was reading that the plates that people used to use, like their grandmothers, for example, what was in their kitchen set or their fancy dining plates, you know, that get passed on to generations, that those were like really quite small. If anybody has any of their grandmother's plates, go measure them. They're probably like 8 inches, 9 inches or something like that. So we really shouldn't be eating on plates larger than 9 inches. 10 maximum, but most of the plates that we buy now are probably, you know, 11 inches. At restaurants, I've seen these really long ones. Have you seen, like, they put the burger on one side and pile up the fries on the other, right? And it's really long. And if you think about it, like during a party, I might use that to serve appetizers on, you know, for a whole group of people. And that's what we're putting our food on. Um, so, yeah, so work on, you know, reducing the size of your plate. Some kits or some, you know, dish sets come with the big plate, the too big plate, and then they'll have the salad plate. And that salad plate sometimes is actually the right plate for our food. So
Wow.
sometimes we should be more dealing with the salad plate, and you can just use that for your entree.
Okay.
Yeah, so kind of talking about portions, I just thought of two things related to this. So talking about portions, I read about a study one time where this person came up with this, sounds like it was a fun experiment to me, or well, I guess I don't know if you would call it an experiment, but anyway, it was their project for college, for a college thing. And so what they did is that they looked at, now I'm going blank on this person's name. Everybody knows this person. She's like the famous chef from many years ago, and she has this really deep voice. She put out so many cookbooks. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going blank on her name.
Unhealthy cookbooks.
With
The stick of butter.
no, they made a movie about it too. A girl that had a similar name took her cookbook and made a recipe every day. Okay, well, anyway.
If anybody knows it, put it in the chat.
Yes, yes, Julia Childs. Thank you. When I was thinking about it, I was like, Julia, and then as soon as I said, we're going to talk about it, I forgot it. So yes, Julia Childs. Thank you so much. So this person took recipe books from her beginning career and then took recipe books from later in her career and looked up whenever she had the same exact recipe in the books.
Yeah.
And then she compared them. They had the same ingredients, the same amount, but on the books that were much older, her books from when she was much younger, it might serve 5 or 6 people. And then the books from later on, the movie is Julie and Julia. I love that movie too. It was so cute. The books that she did later in her career, same list of ingredients, was only going to serve 3 or 4 people. Can you believe that? So like it used to feed 5 or 6 people, but later on it was only feeding 3 or 4 people. So it just goes to show you that we've gotten used to eating more food.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is very big, and I feel like in American culture as well, because when you go over to Europe, their portion sizes are very small.
Yes.
It's like
and
what we eat.
And over there, it's all about really just enjoying the company you're with and the experience of eating, you know, of being together. And so just, you know, when you're paying attention to what you're eating and the amount and that sort of thing, it really helps you so much more to get fuller faster. And really, you know, we're not supposed to be eating to fullness. We're supposed to be eating to not be hungry, which is a different level of fullness. You know, some people will just eat and get so full that a few minutes later they realize they're actually stuffed.
Yes.
You know, overate. Well, it takes about 20 minutes for our brains to catch up to our stomachs. And if you measure how much time it's taking you to eat, for most people, they get it done within 5 to 10 minutes. So can you imagine if after 10 minutes you're done eating and your body's telling you, you haven't eaten, I'm still hungry. The next time you go serve yourself, you're going to serve yourself more because you know that the amount of food you put on your plate before was not enough. So you say, oh, well, let me put more this time. And well, you're still going to eat that in 10 minutes. So you still end up eating, you know, a lot more than what you need. You just feel so stuffed and uncomfortable afterwards. And so, you know, for a lot of people, they may have had this experience, you know, where I'm on a ketogenic lifestyle, so I try to balance my fast with vegetables and proteins and eat. Okay, I couldn't read the rest. So, well, was there a question with that?
Yeah. But go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Okay. All right. So think about a time that you had served yourself your dinner. You sat down to eat. You took a few bites. Let's say maybe you finished about half of it. and then your child spilled something and you had to go take care of that, or somebody's at the door and you have to go into the door and it took longer than you thought, or there was a phone call you had to answer while you're eating dinner. So this happens. And then you come back, you're not even as hungry as you were before, right? Before you got any of those disruptions, you would have eaten that entire plate of food.
Yes.
After the disruption, you come back and you say, I'm not even hungry anymore. And maybe you blame it on the situation, but really it's because you would have gotten full on that amount of food to start with. Yeah. Yeah. So, really pay attention to how much.
Yes. Somebody said that's true, but I love food.
I do too. Which again, that's something that makes my mom laugh, because I used to not like food when I was growing up, and now I love food. And that's one of my downfalls too. I love food.
And I think that's one of the struggles with overeating, is because we do love it. So sometimes when we go for seconds, it's not because we're hungry, but because it, whatever we're eating is our favorite, or it tastes so good. But but what I have noticed is that once you pass the satisfaction stage of eating, the food no longer tastes as good as it tasted when we were first hungry.
Right. But now it's on your plate, so you have to eat it because somebody's starving in my mom's country.
Exactly. So the question was, I'm on a ketogenic lifestyle, so I try to balance my fast with vegetables and proteins. Any comments on a ketogenic lifestyle?
So there are several different ketogenic lifestyles, like it kind of spans. So I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I know for some people it's working great.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, they do lose weight, but then they feel really tired, especially women. It seems to work pretty well with men and less well with women, but I do know some women that absolutely love it and have done it for years, and it's the best they've ever felt.
Right.
And they can keep the weight off. But then again, I know some that cannot, they seem to gain weight. I know some people that actually gain weight on a ketogenic diet, believe it or not, and their sugars go up for some people.
Wow.
So when it comes to any kind of eating pattern, I say pay attention to what's going on, as you're following it, see how you feel. Notice even like your hair and your skin, how does that look? Are you getting all your nutrients? Sometimes on certain eating plans, you just are missing out on a lot of nutrients. So with the ketogenic, if you're getting tons of vegetables, because there are some that don't really include a lot of vegetables, but if you're getting a lot of vegetables and good lean protein, that's not one that I'm afraid of. I haven't been completely convinced yet with the high fat ketogenic diet. There's one that's like 85 or 90% fat. I don't know, some like really high one. Able to maintain my ideal weight, I need to eat more vegetables. So if it's working for you, I say, keep going. As long as your cholesterol is working out and you're feeling good and so on. I like a little bit more of a balanced approach. I don't really like to remove a whole food group, for example, because every food group has its advantages.
Right.
And so I don't like to remove it, but if it works, I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm a little bit more on the scientific side. So until I see like real science that says this is the best way, I say that I like more the Mediterranean style. That's if I have to really encourage one, it's the Mediterranean eating pattern.
And what is that?
And so that's a lot of vegetables, very little animal protein. And actually, like the more original Mediterranean diet, I believe had no animal protein, or maybe like once a week or something like that. So it's a lot of beans, a lot of vegetables, fruits, nuts, olive oil. It's not super low fat because it does have the olive oil, the olives, the nuts, and things like that. So it's not like necessarily a low fat diet, but it's very high in vegetables, and the oils and fats they use tend to be more anti-inflammatory. So that's the one I like to encourage. And when it comes to studies to see which eating plans promote less disease, like cancer and diabetes and things like that, heart disease. The Mediterranean diet is always the top. It always wins out. So that's the one I really encourage a lot. As far as like the ketogenic diet, there are some studies out there, and they're having more and more be done, which I'm happy about because I really want to see, you know, what the results are with that. So like I said, some people do great on it and some don't. And so I say just really pay attention to it. What else would I tell you about that? Yeah, just I worry about removing some of the food groups, because then you lose some of the nutrients. So that's my main concern with the ketogenic diet. And then for some people, their cholesterol does go up. For some it doesn't. For some it goes down. But for some it does go up. So I'm concerned about that. When I ask cardiologists what they think about it, they say, well, we're still doing operations. So, and I do see, you know, people that tell me they've been on a ketogenic diet still getting bypasses and things like that. So, but other people too that follow other meal plans. So I'm not going to just blame that one.
Right.
So, I wonder if, let me know if that answered the question about the ketogenic diet, the person that asked that. I saw there was a question about Crohn's. Yes, it does. Great. There was a question about Crohn's. So that's a disease where you have inflammation in your intestine. So for some people, or for most people, I believe it's in the large intestine, but it can actually anywhere, any part of your digestive system, including your mouth, it can become very inflamed and get ulcers and things like that. But the inflammation, you know, my clients that I've had with it, I know they can suffer so much with it. You know, it can lead to a lot of diarrhea and stomach cramps and so on. And so the medications that are out there now seem to be very, very helpful. But as far as the eating, like healthy eating, that's very individualized for Crohn's. There are a lot of other diseases or illnesses that I can go look up in my nutrition manual and it says, okay, recommend this, 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 and this. But when it comes to Crohn's, it says it's very individualized. It depends on the person. And what maybe bothered you yesterday won't bother you in 2 weeks. So I know it can be very frustrating to not know exactly what should I eat. But what I would say with that is look for the healthiest, or let's say the food like in the most natural form. I'm not saying it has to be organic. What I'm just saying is look for the most natural form. So less processed food. And by that, I mean, you know, all that prepackaged stuff like Cheetos, believe it or not, started out as corn. So, you know, it's better to eat the corn, although I know some people with Crohn's that can't do corn very well because of all the fiber that's in it, you know, that little skin on the outside. But so let me see, trying to just think about, in general, people tell me that the foods that are a little bit on the gassier side, gas producing, seems to bother them when they're having a flare up. But when they're not having a flare up, they do those foods just fine. You know, things like onions and broccoli and cauliflower and that sort of thing. So just kind of watch and see. It seems like spicy foods are a problem too. Spicy and acidic, like tomatoes, seem to be a problem for people, especially when there's a flare up. Raw vegetables can sometimes be a problem for them because they're a little bit harder to digest. Where if you've cooked them, you've cooked down some of the fiber. The fiber doesn't go away, but it's, you know, a little bit more, I guess you could call it like softer. So your body's able to process down and break it down a little bit better. But when it's raw, really, you know, you're chewing it the best you can, but you're still going to end up with little chunks that aren't, you know, that broken down as a cooked vegetable. So that might be something to look at too. You might be able to just get it to like the steaming. You just steam it and keep it a little bit on the harder side if you like it that way. But if you're having a flare up, definitely cook it down a bit more. I've known people with Crohn's that can do whole grain and then others that cannot and have to do like the white rice and the white bread. Um, Overall, just trying to keep your gut as healthy as possible without introducing all the extra sugar and that's the food that's not recognizable as its original, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because we want the healthiest bacteria in our gut, and whatever we feed ourselves is feeding the bacteria. So you're feeding some good bacteria and some bad bacteria. And so which ones are going to take over depends on what you're eating. And this is where I think that things are a little bit different for different people. Like you'll find some people do a little bit better on a little bit more meat, and then others that do better on a vegetarian diet. And I think that some of that probably has to do with our gut bacteria and some of our genetics and that sort of thing. Yeah. And do you have a specific question about Crohn's that I haven't answered? Because in general, I would just say, I would follow just the guidelines that I just realized I haven't really finished talking about. We only got to half of a plate. So I'll talk about the other half in a little bit. But, just in general, what is a healthy choice. I think we all pretty much know. We just need to be reminded.
Yes, yes.
So for that person that asked about Crohn's, just let me know if there was another question. So in the meantime, there was another question, but I couldn't really read it.
There are two questions. One is tofu a healthy choice for women? I've seen contradictory information about this. And then the second question is, I've lost 10 pounds during quarantine and would like to lose 10 more to reach my ideal weight. I feel like I'm eating healthy, watching portion sizes. I walk 3 miles or do an elliptical for half an hour just about every night. What can I do to get over this plateau? Which I feel like a lot of us have had that experience of a plateau.
Okay. I hear the plateau question a lot. That happens quite a bit. And then the question before that, the contradictory results about tofu. So remember I was talking about phytochemicals? Mm-hmm. So tofu has it too, because tofu it comes from a bean. It comes from soybean, and beans have these phytochemicals in it, which are really healthy for us. And the tofu itself has like phytosterols, which could get in the way of estrogen, which, if I'm remembering this correctly, there's certain types of breast cancer that are related to too much estrogen and that sort of thing. So the tofu actually helps reduce that. And there's studies where in Asia, women that eat a lot of tofu have a lower risk of breast cancer. And it might be related to their genetics, but it could also be related to the soybean consumption. The other side of that, women are told that if they've had breast cancer, not to eat the tofu, kind of for the same reason that I just said, because of the types of sterols that are in there. And so I asked a doctor a couple of years ago, she sees a lot of breast cancer. And so I asked her, she had done a talk on it. And so I asked her more details. And I said, so what do I tell my clients? Do I tell them to eat tofu? Do I tell them not to eat tofu? And so she said that like the studies that she had seen, for the most part, what she recommends to her patients is to do just 1 or 2 portions of a soy product, but to look for the most natural way of doing it. So tofu's processed, but it's not the worst choice. So I would say the tofu is fine, but I wouldn't probably eat it every day if you have a history of breast cancer. There are other ways to get your soybeans too. So like just the edamame, for example. And then I discovered black soybeans by mistake. They look exactly like black beans. So I was at my grocery store and I reached for what I thought were black beans. I'm Cuban, so black beans is my staple. And so I brought it home and I opened it and I took a spoonful and I'm like, this is not black beans. And I looked at the can, it was black soybeans. So they're actually like super high in fiber. They have less carbohydrate because of all the fiber that's in there. they're lower in usable carbohydrate compared to black beans. So yeah, so it was interesting. So that grocery store didn't carry it anymore. I think they carried it by mistake, just like I bought it by mistake. But I did find it later on in Whole Foods because I wanted to try it again. And so yeah, I use that once in a while.
Nice.
So J Jones, I don't know what your J stands for, so I'll have to call you J Jones, but I found the black soybeans the second time at Whole Foods. They
Oh,
carry it there. And so I know they carry it in the canned form. They might also carry it in the dried form. So you can make it that way. And so I used it. Oh, and the other good thing about it is because they're black, you know, like the darker the color, the richer in color, the more phytochemicals. So they're even healthier for us. So I used it several ways. I made a cold bean salad. So I chopped up some cucumbers and tomatoes, probably put some onions in there. Depends. If I was going to work the next day, no onions. I wanted to be nice to my clients. But otherwise, tomatoes, cucumbers, probably some carrots. If I had some like roasted zucchini or something like that laying around me, I've thrown that in there too. And then I'd like to add like a little rice vinegar, olive oil, usually a little bit of, if it's not rice vinegar, I'll use some lemon juice or lime juice. And then the seasoning depends on my mood. So I might use a little bit of soy sauce and a little bit of ginger to give it an oriental feel. Or I could go with more of an Italian feel with some oregano and basil and olive oil, or a little bit more Mexican, so a little bit of chili powder, garlic, and cumin.
yes.
And so yeah, so I made that one time, and then for another part of the can, I made black bean patties.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a substitute for hamburgers because, you know, I'm trying to get more vegetables myself. And so what I'm doing is I'm just doing a little bit less animal protein and substituting in more vegetables in its place. So, you know, instead of a hamburger, I could have a black bean patty, or in this case, it was the black soybean patty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
And
cool. Yeah.
yeah, or you can make meatballs out of it.
Oh, I never thought of that.
And for a good transition, just thinking about it, unrelated to the other things I think we're talking about, but just as a little bit of a transition, when I was like, I don't know about this black bean patty thing or black bean meatballs, I just wasn't used to that. I'm like, if I'm going to have a meatball, it's got to have meat in it. So what I did to transitions, I used a little bit of meat and then a whole bunch of black beans, and I mushed it all together. And so I made black bean meatballs with actually a little bit of ground beef in there. And it was pretty good, but it was a good transition because next time then I was able to just go straight to the black bean thing. So that worked out nicely. And then there are some soy products that I don't recommend. So a lot of those, like fake chicken nuggets, for example, are made out of soy products. You know, if somebody's trying really, really hard to transition to a vegetarian diet, for example, I might say, well, you can use that as a treat, but it's not the best choice. It's very highly processed. You might as well have eaten regular chicken nuggets. So be careful with some of those foods. Just really read your labels, and most of the ingredients in there should just be regular food that you would keep in your kitchen.
Yeah.
So if it's, you know, weird stuff,
Can't pronounce or spell.
yes. Well, there's some things that I can't pronounce. They're actually good for me. But no, yeah, but exactly. That's what I like to tell people. If you don't keep this in your kitchen, if you can't buy it at your grocery store as an ingredient to add to your food, you probably shouldn't buy it as an ingredient in your processed foods either. So the other question after that,
Plateau.
the plateau. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say plateaus are not necessarily a bad thing. So don't stress when you hit a plateau. Don't stress about that. Some people I know, like they get so frustrated, they just quit. And that's the last thing I want to see happen. Do not quit when you hit a plateau. Just keep going. A lot of times, if you just stick with what you're doing, within 2 or 3 weeks, suddenly you'll lose 3 pounds out of nowhere. You know, it's like you lost nothing, nothing, nothing. And then all of a sudden, boom, you've lost 3 pounds. And you say, well, how did that happen? I didn't change anything. And it's really your body just kind of getting used to where it's at, because you may have heard of the set point theory. Our body just kind of tries to stay where it's at. It doesn't want to give up those pounds. You know, we keep those pounds honest because it's there for emergencies. And so if, you know, that's kind of the way the body thinks. It's like, what if there's an emergency? What if you try to starve me? Which is what happens with some of the weight loss diets. Unfortunately, people end up starving. And so the body tries to hang on to every calorie it can, because tomorrow you're not going to feed me either. So, you know, or not enough, basically. And so there comes a point where your body just says, no, we're hanging on to this. If you just kind of stay the course, 2 or 3 weeks, see what happens. If you lose the weight, great, keep going. Exactly doing what you're doing. Don't change anything. But if nothing happens after 2 or 3 weeks, then you can start looking at different things like, especially with a dietitian, this sometimes is really helpful to go see a dietitian in this case, because what they can do is look at, you know, are you getting enough calories? Because that could be the problem. You know,
Yep.
maybe you're not getting enough calories. Yes. So yeah, I have a friend that had been trying to lose weight, and of course she did it the traditional way, went too low in calories, she lost weight, but then got stuck. She ended up going to somebody who put her on almost double the calories. She was also working out though. There was a workout program that went with it and everything. But she called me and she said, is this going to be okay? I'm so scared I'm going to gain weight. This is what they want me to do. And I was like, well, that's how many calories you should have been on in the first place, you know? So it'll take a little while, but the body will get used to that. And you'll finally get the calories you need to actually, your body will be willing to let go of some of those calories because there's more coming. So other things you can do to get off of a plateau is change up your workout. I hear that works a lot too.
Yeah.
So sometimes just changing up your workout a little bit, or trying to change up the foods a little bit. I find that sometimes just even increasing the calories just 1 time a week
Mm.
or 2 times a week, you know, like every few days, just increase the calories more. That can help too, kind of jumpstart everything again.
Is this assuming, when you say increase the calories, is this assuming that we are eating within our calories and not already overeating? So like, I know for women, like, you know, when I last saw my dietitian, she had me on like a 1,500 calorie um
Meal plan.
attempting a 1,500 calorie meal plan. So is this assuming that like you're already eating like the 1,500 calories versus like eating the 2,500 calories, and then you're saying
Exactly.
add more to the 2,500 calories?
Exactly. Thank you. And it's also assuming that your extra calories are not going to come from too many more chocolate covered strawberries.
Oh,
Try
you mean like eat more vegetables, eat more the
yeah,
stuff, the
veggies
non-starchy
and
vegetables
yes, and
and
beans.
fruits.
I like to count beans as vegetables. So I know people say, no, that's just a starch, but okay, I'm like, it's a starchy vegetable. But to me, it's like a complete meal because it has protein in it too.
Uh,
So yeah, but it is a little bit higher in calories than the non-starchy vegetables. So I mean, you could even do that. You know, so just include more food, but include food that is going to do a service to us instead of doing harm to us.
yes, that makes sense.
Um, so, and then as far as changing up the workout, so I'm not a fitness expert or anything, but from what I've read is that you can change up the intensity of your workout. You can change up the duration of your workout. Although working out too long can also be stressful on your body. And so that could be something that could cause you to not be able to let go of those extra pounds as well.
Right. Wow.
Make sure you're getting enough sleep.
Oh,
That's a big one.
that's my problem right there. I think that's the reason why I'm stuck. It's because of the sleep. Seriously, Mason.
So yeah, believe it or not, a lot of times when I talk to my clients, that's one of my first questions. You know, my question is, well, let's give me a list of what you're eating. you know, like to tell me a typical day. And then before we actually get to talking about them, I'm like, okay, now let's talk water and let's talk sleep. So we try to tackle that and then the vegetables. So yeah, because when we're sleeping, that's when our body's in recovery and, you know, healing and making new things in our body. And if we're not getting the right amount of sleep, that's causing a stress in our body, and all that extra stress is going to just hang on to your weight. So work on the sleep and getting enough water for sure.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Reducing our stress. That is also one. Yes.
Yes, but don't let the plateau actually be a stress, because it can take it's a lot of times it's just your body trying to get used to that new weight. And so, you know, if somebody's doing really great for several months and they hit the plateau, I'm like, good, this is a good sign. Actually, this is saying your body's like, okay, I get it, this is where you want to be. And then I just stay there, and then you'll start to lose a little bit again. So to me, weight loss, when it's done the right way, sometimes looks like this, and then like this, and then like this, and then like this. It's not this, and it's definitely not this.
Right.
We want to take it slow, because if we do it too quickly, we actually lose muscle mass. Yes, we can lose quite a bit of muscle when we are losing too much weight too quickly. And the body's not wanting to do that. So gradual is the best way, almost like your body doesn't even notice that it's releasing all these extra calories from your body. Kind of look at it like that.
Okay.
All right, so there was another question.
Some doctors are saying that exercise does not cause you to lose weight. What is your view?
Okay, so exercise, I know I've heard this a few times already too. So there's some studies that say, you know, you can exercise all you want, but if you're not eating right, and I really don't like using that word, let me take that back, because I don't like saying there's a right or wrong.
Balanced diet.
So, there's some better choices and then some not so better choices, and we just try to do the better choices more often and the not so great choices less often, but we don't have to stay away from them completely. But yes, it's true that you could exercise all day long, but if you're eating the processed foods, you know, the junk that your body's like, what am I supposed to do with this? You're not going to lose weight. If you do too much exercise, as I said before, this actually could be a stress on your body. And I've been reading more and more that this is especially true in women that are reaching more like the menopause age. You know, it seems like right around that age, they seem to need a little bit more of a gentle type of exercise. So instead of doing that, you know, high impact aerobics, it's more of like the low impact and not a huge amount of time, and really probably more just muscle work with, you know, some walking and maybe some yoga for stretching and things like that. But the muscle stuff,
Throw in the weights. Yeah, so we need to throw in in there.
Yeah, that seems to be the most important. So, and when you work out, any activity you do, it doesn't have to be what we call exercise. Any activity we do, whether it's gardening or running around with our kids, you know, things like that, that's energy that you're burning in your body. So the food that you're taking in is energy. And the energy that comes in needs to go out. Some of it will be used for repairs in your body and just for body function and breathing, but whatever you're not using needs to go. Otherwise it stays in your body as storage. And so we, you know, we need to use it up basically. Otherwise you're going to store it up in your body.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers the question. So I say exercise. Do not stop exercising, because there's more benefit than just weight loss.
Yeah, your heart, a stronger heart. Yes.
Yes. The stronger heart, our mood, it affects your mood so much.
Your mental health.
Yes. I mean, I notice it. I do notice that. I have to say that I go stretches of time. I will admit to this, where I don't do you know, whatever fitness plan I'm following at the time, which is usually, I like the treadmill, I really do. Or I find some YouTube videos that involve like some dancing and stuff, and so I'll do that. And I'm terrible at dancing, so I close the door and lock it so my husband can't see me.
Oh.
because I will trip over myself. But yes, if I'm not doing this sort of thing pretty consistently, I notice my mood change. You know, I get frustrated more easily. I can't think as clearly. I will get depressed. Anxiety is so much easier to, to take over. Um, Plus, if I do it early in the day, I feel like I've already accomplished something huge. So I try to do it earlier in the day. Although I do prefer to do it at night for myself. I do like it better at night, but I've noticed that if I do it during the day, it gets done. So I try to do it then. um, and also too, it's important for our balance. So you may notice over time that if you're not doing any kind of activity, especially the strength training thing and balance type of work, like yoga and Tai Chi, things like that can help. You're going to start to notice a difference in how you stand or how you walk, or can you stand on one foot anymore? Like when we were kids, we could probably do it for a really long time. Can you still do that without falling over?
Yikes.
Yeah. And so that happens when you start to lose some of your muscle mass.
Oh.
Yeah. Because, it takes your core even to build up. So, and if you're not keeping your core strong,
Mm-hmm.
any little thing you do, you go pick something up off the floor. And I was like, oh, I pulled something, because you're not keeping yourself strong. And we just start to lose this muscle strength over time because we're just not keeping it as much. When we're younger, we're running around doing more things, and we're more willing to reach for this and reach for that and grab this thing that fell. And we don't even think about it. But as we get older, we start to be more careful and, more cautious about what we do. Like I used to jump down my steps. Like seriously, at my house, we have like 3 or 4 steps, and I used to just like kind of hop down or just jump down. And one time I slipped and it scared me to death. And so after that, I never did it again.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm getting older. I gotta be really careful. And so I've noticed that there are things like that I start to be more careful about. And so I'm losing that ability to move that way. And so I have to find different ways to get around it and to be more confident. Like the stronger your muscles are and the more active you are, the more confident you are with your own body and what it can do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lesson that I'm definitely learning. So was there another question that came up?
Well, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So, during this time, this quarantine time, we have all been stress eating and reaching for the comfort foods, right?
Right.
How do we unassociate, I guess, like when I'm stressed out, my go-to is brownies and ice cream. That's like my like I feel like, yes, I
Oh.
had a stressful week, I want to indulge. So how do we strike a balance there with, you know, finding other ways to cope without overindulging in,
Well,
high calorie sugar.
first of all, we could be twins because brownies and ice cream, oh my gosh, that sounds like a great combination. I love that. But that would be a downfall for me if I kept that in my house. And not that I don't, I mean, once in a while I do have it, but I do know that when I have it in my house, it's hard for me to say no. Some people can. I have a friend who can take a few bites of something and say, I'm done. And we were actually talking about this the other day. I'm like, I don't understand. I really admire you for being able to do that. And some people can do that. She says, well, I just have a few bites and I'm happy. I got the taste I wanted. I'm like, but I love brownies. I love the feel of them. I love the taste of them. It's hard to say no to them. And so if I make them, I try to just make a small batch. Or, which believe it or not, just the box of brownies, if you're making them from a box,
Yeah.
I now have started just using a portion of the box instead of making all the brownies at once.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I mean, people make the brownie in a mug and cake in a mug and stuff. So I was like, whoa, why can't I do that with these brownies? So you just can't use eggs or something like that. You just kind of have to experiment. I like to experiment, so I'm comfortable with doing that. Or some people will make the whole batch and then just take 2 or 3 pieces for, to last them a few days and then freeze the rest.
Yeah.
And if you freeze it, if you have a second freezer that you keep in like the garage or something, go throw it in there behind something. So
Yes.
get it there. So that's an option. The ice cream, well, and any kind of treat, not just ice cream and brownies, but any kind of treat. I don't like to tell people don't have it, because as soon as I say, stop eating the donut, stop eating this, what's going to happen? That's the first thing they want to go out and eat, because we like to break rules. We like to say, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. Watch me. I'm going to. And I think that's how we feel about those sorts of things that we like to call treats. We think like, oh, those are not like, those are like the forbidden things, you know? So we, you know, at first we feel good eating them, and then we feel guilty. And we shouldn't feel guilty eating something that tastes good to us, you know? We
Right.
just want to try to eat it less often. So one choice might be, um, I had somebody one time that was eating ice cream every single day, and he did not feel like, well, he was eating about probably easily 2 or 3 cups of ice cream.
A
And
day?
so, yes, a day. And so when we looked at what he normally eats and what his nutrition goals were, I said, there's kind of a simple fix. I'm not going to tell you it's easy, but it's a simple fix. And that is to just decrease the amount of ice cream you're eating.
Right.
And so that was really tough. I think that this grown man was just about to cry. But, you know, we compromised. I said, you know, what if instead of using the ice cream scooper, you know, instead of scooping it 6 times, can we scoop 4 times? And we'll try that for a few weeks, you know, and then gradually get down to 2 scoops. Or we could choose to only have ice cream in the same amount or a little bit less, maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or Friday and Saturday. You know, just pick and be very specific about the days and don't change it. You know, to try doing that. And so that worked for that person. It worked really well. So just kind of like finding tricks like that. For me, brownies is probably like once every few months, because that's one of my foods I really cannot say no to.
Mm-hmm.
For my ice cream, if the ice cream comes, I just enjoy it. If it's sitting in my freezer, I just enjoy it. So I try to make sure it's not in my freezer as much as possible.
Right.
And instead, I've been making the banana, uh,
Oh yeah.
nice cream is what they're calling it. You know, the frozen banana slices, and you throw other fruit in there if you want to. Um, it's lower in calories and fat than regular ice cream. It still does have a lot of the fruit sugar. So for people with diabetes, you know, they just want to be aware of how much they're eating.
Right.
But what I've started doing is like I'll make a big batch and then just put it into little tiny containers like this, because a lot of times all I need is just a few tastes and that's it. And then I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And there was one other question here about what are your thoughts on detoxing and cleanses? Is this healthy?
so there's a lot of split ideas about that. And so I'm more on the side of, if you're eating your veggies, you're cleansing.
Mm.
If you're eating your whole grain and your high fiber and your beans, you are most definitely cleansing.
Yes.
And, you know, trying to stay away, like I said earlier, from just all these foreign things in our bodies, and just trying to go with more of the natural foods the way they came.
Yeah.
The way they're grown more often than, you know, so processed that you can't even identify them anymore. So that's how I feel about that.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I think that one of the things that I'm a little fearful of like the detox and the cleanses and stuff like that from the diet point of view,
Mm-hmm.
from the diet culture, I would
Yes.
say, point of view, versus like you say, if we're naturally eating veggies and we're naturally eating a balance, you know, plate,
Yes.
then, and let's say the half of the plate is veggies and a quarter is protein and the other quarter would be starch, the carbohydrates. Yes, the carbohydrates. Right? And then the carbohydrates,
Get to it.
yeah, and the carbohydrates that we choose can still be the natural carbohydrates like sweet potatoes, yams,
Yes.
cassava, you know, like those types of
Plantains.
carbohydrates.
Don't forget our plantains.
Yes, and plantains, yes. You know, and those are food in its natural forms that are not processed. And that
Right.
so if your plate had a quarter of like potatoes, sweet potatoes, plantains, made up a quarter of your plate, and another quarter was like a piece of fish, and the other half were veggies, that's an entire cleansing plate, basically.
Exactly.
And if we ate like that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we will all be on a cleanse.
Exactly.
It's just that we don't eat like that naturally. And so what we end up doing is that when we go on a cleanse, the cleanse is almost like a temporary fix as opposed to, and that's why me personally, like I'm like always cautious of diets and cleanses or anything that resembles like a diet.
Right.
The diet culture, you know?
Right. It can definitely lead to just a fear of food. And, you know, people say like, oh, I splurged this weekend, so now on Monday I should just have my vegetable juice all day, you know? And so it's a lot of trying to fix things, which is not what we're trying to do when we're trying to eat, you know, choices that promote health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there another question?
There was another question. With the many changes and different dynamics happening in every aspect of our lives, I have noticed that my blood pressure has been low on more than one occasion, which is not normal for me because it's usually good. What foods do you suggest that will improve the low blood pressure?
So first of all, if you're on blood pressure medication, then talk to your doctor about that because you may need a different dose or a different medication.
Right.
If you're not on medication for blood pressure,
they're not on meds because it was never a problem. Yeah.
Okay. If you know if you're tending to eat pretty healthy, you're getting, you know, you're not overdoing your water. Make sure you're not flushing all the salt out of your blood, out of yourself. You know, some people will just drink, you know, 2 or 3 gallons worth of water and just, you know, lose so much of the salt in their body. So think about that. If you're working out and using salt, but you're not replacing it, that could be another thing. But if it's not any of those, I almost want to say you might want to talk to your doctor just to make sure, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but just to make sure that it's not something else that's easily fixable.
Right. Just to be on the safe side.
Uh-huh.
And how much water should we drink, right? Because how much is too much? I never considered, I have never considered drinking too much water, you know, because the struggle is always drinking enough water.
Yes.
So
I mean, the easiest answer, there's actually no real study that says this is the perfect amount of water for us. So even as dietitians, when people ask us like, oh, I don't know. I mean, there's like general guidelines, but
like half your body weight, you know.
Yes, those are general guidelines and they work for most people. So yes, generally, you know, the larger of a person you are, the more water you need. Smaller people tend to need less water. But for most people, I say, you know, if you're doing like 1.5 liters, 2 liters, that's perfect. I've noticed I need about 2.5. I tend to do a little less because sometimes I'm not that good at getting my water, but I know that my perfect amount seems to be a little bit over 2 liters. And I'm not a big person. I'm only 5'2". I'm what I consider tiny. And I seem to need a little bit more water than, like, I need as much water as my husband, I think.
That's at least 8 cups that you're drinking relatively.
Definitely.
Ounce cups.
Yes, when I'm doing the amount that my body asks for. So if you just look at your urine, if it's a deep yellow, you're not getting enough water for sure. So it should be a very pale yellow. That's how you know you're getting enough water.
Okay, that's a great test. Yes.
Yeah. So medium to dark, you're not getting enough. If you're thirsty, you're definitely way behind on your water intake. And the thing is that some people do lose their thirst sensation over time, especially as we get older. Yes, we do start to lose our thirst sensation. So we actually have to use cues to remind us. So you might want to measure out your water at the beginning of the day. Like I have 2 specific size bottles that are each almost 1 liter, and I fill those up. And I know by the end of the day, if I have not used those up, I did not do my water job. Yes. I'll have to work on that a little harder tomorrow. So, and one time I was really having a hard time. So at work, what I did is I set an alarm to go off every hour to remind me to drink, several ounces of water.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
These were some great questions
Yeah.
and good tips.
I had like so many other things to talk about, but
Oh,
we have
right?
time with all the questions. This is great.
It's like the time went by so fast.
It did.
So,
I'll
so
have to I'll have to come back another time with all these other tips that I've got.
yes, yes. Well, do tell our friends where we can find you if anybody wants to get in touch with you. I know you said that you were taking a couple of clients.
Mhm.
So if you're doing that, let us know how
Sure,
we can reach out
uh,
to you.
I'll give you my email.
Hmm.
So it's Linda, Linda dot Armada, as in the Spanish Armada,
Uh-huh.
A-R, M as in Mary, A-D as in dog, the number 7 at gmail.com.
All right.
And then when you write to me, let me know that you know me from Authentic Marriages.
Did I spell that right? I put it in the chat.
You did. Perfect. Yes.
Yes. This was excellent. So many good tips. I feel re-inspired to come off the struggle bus.
Well, I have about 1,000 more tips. So when you're ready for more, let me know.
I've been camping out on the struggle bus for 6 months now. So I'm like, it's time
Oh,
to get off. It's time to get off. And I really do need to recalibrate. The last time I met with my nutritionist was in sometime in March, either February or March.
okay.
It's been that long. So it's time.
Yes. And they're great for just really inspiring you, making you think about things you didn't think about. And then even if you've seen somebody say 2 or 3 years ago and you were successful, our bodies change over time. So our needs change. So that's, if you start to see that things are, like you're in a slump or you just need some more ideas or you want to know if you're ready to try some new things, that's a great time to see a dietitian.
Yeah, yeah. And preventing diabetes, because
Yeah.
diabetes runs in my family. And I had shared with Linda before you guys got on that I had pre-diabetes, then gestational diabetes. And so I am fighting to not develop a chronic illness.
Yeah, just
And
like
so,
me.
yeah.
Exactly like me. Like I told you, I'm Hispanic and I have a family history, so I already have 2 points against
Exactly.
me. And then when I go through my lazy months and I'm not as active, that's 3 points against me. And then I try to remind myself that getting diabetes, at least type 2, sometimes it's like you're in a checkout line,
Mhm.
and if you purchase all these little risk factors, you're going to get to the checkout register a lot faster. So when I think about this, and I try to find ways to get myself further away from the register because I do not want to check out with diabetes.
Yes.
And
I love
yet
that illustration.
sometimes we do everything that we think we need to do and we could still get it. And that's a whole other topic. Like we need to not feel guilty about, it's like it's not your fault you got an illness. There may have been things that you didn't work on that you wish you had, but the past is the past, and you deal with what you have and you move on.
Yes.
So, but that's a whole other topic about, not feeling guilty about, some of the choices you've made and the diseases you might come up with and so on.
Yeah. And now we know better, we can do better. So thank
Yeah.
you for the encouragement. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. This was extremely informative. Now, for those of you who have never used a dietitian, I have used a dietitian like for several years of my life. Starting 10 years ago, I started using a dietitian. And so for me, accountability is like the biggest piece. Like if you struggle with even just being accountable to yourself, it can go such a long way. Just like with a therapist and mental health, it's like,
Exactly. Yes.
it's like it's we have the support systems in place, and just reach out to your your support network, you know, and your support network includes your doctors, it includes your therapists, it includes your dietitians, you know, so to just have balance in our lives, we
Right.
need a little bit of everything.
Yes. Well, thank you everybody for the questions. Those are really great questions.
Yes, yes. And thank you, Linda.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Have a good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.